Hey YouTube, this is Roger.
And I'm Sandy, his wife.
Hi, we're trying to start a channel on YouTube that'll be called RNS Homestead.
That stands for Roger and Sandy. He's Roger, I'm Sandy.
And Homestead we want to build and share with our audience is one that we've been working on for about a year. And it's going to be a great channel, and we think you could learn some lessons that we've learned. And I believe all of us need to be more self-sufficient. So that's what we're here for.
Yeah, we started a little over a year ago trying to make a goal of being more self-sufficient, and it's a little bit more difficult than what most people obviously would think, because self-sufficient, what's the definition of that?
Basically, not needing to rely on or depend on maybe the government or maybe stores or things that we find ourselves relying on right now, like electricity, and the fact that if electricity goes off, we can have a hard time, and people have had a hard time recently in Hurricane Sandy. So things like that make you self-sufficient, where you can go out back into your yard and feed you and your family and live sustainably and be self-sufficient, which is what our definition of it is.
And I don't think that it's a new concept of being self-sufficient. I think that we weren't really meant to be as dependent on the stores or the feed stores or the government or jobs, even, for that fact. I think that people had a much better idea of how to take care of themselves and how to feed themselves, and somewhere we lost our way. And now you take a look around, and my husband can definitely, describe better what's happening with the economy and hyperinflation, or the physical cliff, or just things that are happening, that we decided about a year or so ago it's time to at least have a backup plan. It's not that we never go to the store, or you never see us out in public, and we don't typically come across as your typical homesteaders. We set a whole new kind of trend there, but you're seeing more people like us, where they don't have the pitchfork, and the kids are walking around in the hay sacks, and the wife looks like a goat. So more people are getting on board with what that looks like for them.
And for us, it's not about the recent hits of Doomsday Prepper and stuff like that. Those are fine and dandy, but what we want is a sustainable way to live, and live daily, and enjoy our life, enjoy the animals that we're raising, enjoy the fresh food, know what our food is eating and what's going into our bodies, and try to get away from some of the reliance on meat and food and all the stuff that comes from the store that's packaged and processed and all that stuff. So that's one of our goals.
It's a slow goal, though.
Yeah, it's, we're on property that's pretty tough to grow your own food. I mean, we don't have acres and acres of farmland, but we have a small garden spot, and so we can raise the basic vegetables. And then we want to be more self-reliant as far as our goats and giving us milk, and our chickens giving us eggs, and breeding chickens and eating fresh chicken. When we bought some recent meat chickens, we raised those for 6 to 8 weeks, and then we butchered them and ate on those for a couple of months anytime we had chicken. And it was kind of neat to have food that you had to process, which is some things that is very foreign to most people.
Well, I also think that part of the problem is how, here in America, we do things a little bit different, and what you might see in other cultures or other countries. They still use animals instead of tractors, perhaps, or they still do a lot of hunting, or the women do a lot of baking. And here we have so many options and choices of stores and
modern conveniences.
Fast food, that what's happened is that I think it's kind of like the movie WALL-E, isn't it, WALL-E, where they're kind of watching their life instead of living their life. And so every time we go to the store, not that they didn't have stores back then, or you couldn't go and let somebody, a farmer's market could be considered a type of store, but it's, in the movie WALL-E, they get to the point that they're watching somebody else live their life, and that's how they're living their life, is by watching somebody else. And we do that all the time through even watching TV, or whatever, it could be a soap opera or football, just where you're constantly watching somebody else live their life, and that's what you get up every day and do. And so we've gotten lazy and we've become unskillful in how to do these things, and then all of a sudden we kind of get a wake-up call that you might need to return to some of those ways, or at least learn those new skills and implement them into some of the modern day that we live in.
And some of our background, we're typical 40-somethings that grew up with modern conveniences. We saw the internet come along. We saw things like microwaves come along when I was a kid, and things that have made modern conveniences have made our lives so busy and so full of stuff that rarely are we like a family anymore. And my background, I had last name's Farmer, and the farmers had a pig farm, and they totally lived self-reliant. And so grew up around that as a kid, and didn't learn much because I only did it for up until I was 8 or 9 or 10 or something like that. But I want to get back to that, get kind of back to my roots and back to America's roots, where we did not depend on some truck coming to town to deliver our food. That is just one major mishap or major disaster away from people starving. They say, I've heard it said a lot, that within about 72 hours there'd be riots if a major city was not able to get food in and things weren't shipped in.
I also think it's a mindset, because when I was growing up, our family didn't have a lot of money, and so we had a garden, we had a well. Even though we only rented our property and our house, the people that rented the land, I said the house, somebody else rented the property, they had cows, and so we had access to their milk if we wanted it, because they basically just was raising them to breed them.
So your mom milked at the time?
And we had chickens and all that, and I didn't enjoy any of it. I also remember having all the conveniences of, pizza and candy and all those things. So, which is part of something I also am very convinced of, is that we just need balance in the world. I don't think it's this way or that way. I think there's a balance there. But at the same time, as a kid, you just don't have a lot of interest in it. You see it as chores. You see it as unnecessary work. It's inconvenient. But my dad was on Social Security at an early age. My mom worked in a nurse home. There wasn't a lot of money, and you had to find ways to supplement. And yet our family was considered almost very poor for doing these things. And yet now you look back and you see people that are getting organic eggs or raw milk or farmers markets, and they're considered to be eating the best of the food, and they're smart, and they're actually profiting in some ways off this. So it's a mindset. It's like, what goes out tomorrow will be back in.
It's really expensive, though, to eat well in today's society. We've gotten used to cheap food, fast food, those kind of things. And for you to do the right thing, maybe put the most wholesome stuff in your body, it's expensive. And so if you can, like we've done, if you can go out in your backyard and grow tomatoes and cucumbers and the things that are just delicious on salads, and your own chickens, your own beef, hopefully someday. We'd probably go buy a beef that's fed on, grass-fed, or we would raise a pig maybe and put that in our deep freeze. So what our goal of this video is to bring you along on our journey, show you the things we've done, the lessons we've learned, and give you some ideas for homesteading yourself. My ultimate goal, if somebody twisted my arm right now, was to be kind of like our ancestors, not dependent on a check from, a job, but actually, own your own land, raise chickens, goats, sheep, cows, the whole 9 yards. And I feel very blessed that our kids, our 14-year-old daughter, my dad was just blown away that she was milking a goat. And, she did great at it. And he was like, wow, you don't see that these days. And so it is a bit of an anomaly for kids to grow up and recognize hard work. I had quite a bit of hard work when I was a kid, but nothing like on the farm. It was more, basic chores. So we want to bring our kids up with good things that they learn that will keep them sustained in life. Teach a man to fish, he'll eat forever. And that's kind of what we want to do and what we want to bring to YouTube.
Well, and also just, again, when you think about homesteaders or you think about farmers or people who have gardens, you either think they're poor, they're old, they're bored, or they're
Stinky.
Or they're very green people.
Mm-hmm.
No, if you come into our house, you're gonna see Oreos. If you come into our house, you may see outside we have 6 goats, and we also drink raw milk. And some people be like, well, you're not sure of what you believe, and it's not that. It's that as you start this journey, it's a slow process because you've had far more years to believe in that way than to believe in the new way. And so it's easy if you're tired, if you've got a lot going on, or 1 year our garden did well, this year it did not do well, you can become frustrated. And then we began to watch videos that would encourage us that people would have floods, or they would have something to go wrong that would destroy their crops, or 13 cows die in 1 year. And so you can't throw out the baby with the bathwater just because you had a bad year or a bad experience. And so we still do go to the store, we still do those things. But again, this is not something that happens overnight. You have to like almost reprogram yourself to believe, because we are brought up by society to shop a certain way, to eat a certain way. And, McDonald's is fun. And then all of a sudden you're kind of back and you're accused of being like a 50s person if the mom's in the kitchen baking, because there's not a lot of moms that can do that now because of financial reasons, or even desire to do that now, depending on where they're at in their life.
Really, America's become what they call it, racing, outdoing the Joneses, or the race to have more stuff than your neighbor and the greenest lawn and that kind of stuff. And yeah, that is all fine and dandy, but it's hollow. I mean, we've been on that race, we've been on that journey, and we've pulled back as far as we can. I've had a close call with our family, and we want to recognize that our kids are growing up. We've got a couple that are already grown, and we've got 3 more that are coming right behind them. And what did we instill in our children that in case there is no Social Security, which everything I read and look at and learn is if you're dependent on the government to bail you out, and if you were dependent on your 401 to be there when you retire, there's a good probability that it won't. And everyone tells you to diversify if they're a good financial advisor. And what we believe our diversification would be, and people's diversification should be, is having skills that if you stepped out on a piece of land, you could feed yourself and your family and to others, because we believe that's where America may be headed if we're not careful. We may have to supplement if hyperinflation hits. You may not be able to afford that loaf of bread. Well,
and this is part 1, and I think we have time to make maybe a part 2 just to kind of go a little bit more into it. So we're going to end here so we don't just get cut off randomly or run into any issues, and then we'll make a part 2, just kind of follow up with what we're doing. But that's the gist of what this video is going to be about. My husband and I, he has different vlogs, and I do different things. So we're not just homesteaders, but for this channel, this is what we'll try to focus on, is being more self-sufficient. And so we're going to...
This one's kind of our philosophy, and we'll get into the nuts and bolts throughout all the other videos. Maybe part 2 will tell you a little bit about our, what we have on the farmstead and what our goals are and stuff like that. So stay tuned for part 2.
All right.
See you later, YouTube. Be sure to subscribe and like us, and pass this on to your friends. Thank you.